slide deck, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Everybody give me a thumbs up if you can see that slide deck.
Yeah.
Woo! All right, thank you. Welcome to Working with Other Agile Coaches. And we have a hashtag, feel free to tweet that out. Coaching drama. And over to my left is my partner. And we're thrilled to be here today. And of course, we're going to introduce ourselves. And what better way to introduce ourselves than pictures of us in Zoom while we're in Zoom? Oh. So you want to go first, Vinnie? Introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on a Sunday. Really appreciate it. My name is Vinnie, and I'm an Agile coach, and I'm currently in Perth, Australia. And as Alex was saying before, it is the most remote city in the world. Over to you, Alex.
My name's Alex Sloley. I'm a coach in Sydney, Australia. And Vinnie and I are partners in crime for this session. And do you want to tell a quick story of like how we, well, I mean, it was really your idea and you invited me along. So how did this come about?
Well, I suppose this came about, don't be modest, Alex, it came up together with you. This is actually, and I would say an issue that we do face in our Agile community. However, sometimes, most of the times, we always have this conception that, as Agile coaches, we're the best, we have the greatest team, so we can work together. But actually, as we hope that you'll join us on our journey today, you'll start to uncover that we're just like any other team out there. Would you like to add on that, Alex?
Well, I think we were curious about the people in the call and what they might think. So we created a Mentimeter for it, right? So we could actually kind of get a temperature of the room or the virtual room, right? So let's see about Mentimeter. We're only going to ask you 2 questions. You want to go over the questions real quick, Vinnie, and then I'll fire up the Menti?
Yeah, sure. So we designed our workshop as we know it's Zoom and we're not there in person, but we still wanted to know what you feel and we still wanted interaction from you. So we've created a Menti with 2 simple questions. And the first question is if you can get your phones out. Tia, are you ready to project the Menti?
I shall be in 1 second.
So there you go. So the first question, Alex will be projecting the Menti and we all will get a chance to vote together is...
Well, I just brought it down. Let me fire up the Menti.
We've got more people joining us, so welcome. Just 1 wee second. But have your phones on standby, and if you go to menti.com, if you get the browser up,
hopefully you can see that, right, Vinnie?
yes, absolutely. Okay, so we just want a sense check. The first question we have is if you go to Menti and the code is right at the top of the Menti, it's 39 55 77 5. Have you ever worked with a coach who is challenging to work with? So the options are yes, 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 I'm so lucky, or no, just my sad, sorry luck. Before we proceed, we just like to know and have a read, as Alex was saying, so that we can also pitch and inspect and adapt our talk according to what you say. So a lot of yeses, lots of yeses, a lot of yeses. Maybe it's just me and Alex that is. Anuradha says no. Are you able to vote on the on the mentee, Anuradha?
Yes, I went.
Is it just us? Maybe we're the difficult ones.
Well, I mean, the question's asking them if they've worked with challenging coaches, and it looks like they have, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, what was I thinking? Yes.
Well, I'm not surprised by this. We don't have that many people in the room, so I guess we'll just go to the next question, right?
Yeah. So nobody has had like a no answer. That's cool. Next question. All right. So this is the one word. Sounds like a one-word retrospective, but one word, describe what you find most difficult about working with another coach. I believe you're allowed to submit more than once, so just feel free.
Oh man. I can see where this is going.
Alex and I find it difficult to work with each other because we both try to compete who has the better hair. Me. I want to fix everything my way.
Wow. Very self-centered, isn't it?
We do have quite a few people on the call, so a lot more have joined us. So we really invite you to participate.
Yeah.
Sounding very negative, being very purist, good one.
Oh, wow.
That's a big one. Not living the agile values.
That was what you brought up from the very beginning with me, Vinnie. You know, we talk the talk, but we don't walk the walk kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for sharing. I think you might find things that resonate in this presentation for you. Let me go ahead and stop sharing this and we'll get back to the slide deck. Just give me a second. All right, give me a thumbs up if you can see that slide deck. Excellent. So, I mean, why is it important to work with other Agile coaches, Vinnie?
Well, coaching is a tough gig, as most of us know. And I feel that it's so important to have your coaching, not only your coaching colleagues, but your coaching community as well. This is someone that you can rely on, someone that has your back, someone that actually understands what you're going through on a day-to-day basis, right? Yeah. And what about collaboration, Alex, in that part?
Well, I think, you know, coaches are subject to siloing as much as anybody else on an Agile team, right? And if you've worked alone for a while, especially if you're a lone wolf coach, you might start to think you're always right, or you might start to think your way is the only way because you're just not getting those other opinions. You might call them challenges, or maybe you just have another coach who can ask you questions to get you to start thinking. I think we're subject to having our biases just as much as any other person. And then finally, I think the other reason we want to be able to work well with other Agile coaches is something I know that you're really interested in, Vinnie, that last one.
Yeah, it's all about learning from each other. And I suppose that's what we're here today as well. We're here to learn from each other, and the Agile community is big on learning. So I feel it's so important because we all have our different areas of specialization, but we always have that space that we want to learn and grow from each other. So that's really important, and I feel that's what makes us better people and better coaches. Okay, right. That's a lot
So-
there, isn't it?
Yeah. What do you think when you just started a new job recently? How long ago have you been in that new gig?
About almost 3 months, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did this slide come to mind when you went into that new client?
Kind of, yeah, it actually did. Because I'm not sure about some of you guys on the call, but as a coach, I've actually had all 3 different types of employment as a coach. I've been a permanent coach, I've been a contractor, and I've also been a consultant, fed through by a consultant agency as a contractor as well. What about you, Alex?
Well, yeah, I think if you've been around long enough, you will have been all those different types. And then I think you'll start to understand that agile coaches have different behaviors and might act differently depending on which of those employment types they are. So when you drop into a new client and you start to assess the client, you're also assessing your coaching peers if you have coaching peers. And I think that employment type is one of the relevant things you need to look at. And beyond the employment types, I think you need to look at coach types. I mean, how would you, if you had to put a label, just put a label on yourself, Vinnie, which coach type do you think more of?
Do I think more of?
Well, I mean, which one do you think you are more of? Are you more team?
Yeah, currently in the job role that I am, I'm currently program level coaching, but the one I actually enjoy the most is actually enterprise coaching.
Hmm.
Yeah, and
So I
that's
think
supposed.
I'm enterprisey too. So you and I would have to figure that out if we were at the same client together, like we were both enterprisey. Is that what we would have to do?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And also, given if you look at all these types and if you tie them back with your employment type and the coach type, you'll start to see patterns and how different people will behave differently in terms of where they're at and together with their peers as well. Because if you throw that into the mix, you've got the different management types that we have to work with. So Alex, I believe you're always at the executive level currently, aren't you?
A lot of it's executive level right now. Yeah, I think it depends on the client. Like sometimes you'll go into a client and you'll be like working most at the enterprise level and executives. And I think every situation is different. So I think when you go to a new client, you have to assess that and assess all your coaches that you're working with. I mean, I suppose if you were a new developer on a new agile team, you'd be doing the same thing, right? You'd be evaluating your teammates and figuring out how to work with them. Is that pretty much it, Vinnie?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So even if we look at this and think that who the coaches are the system, I do feel that this is actually relevant, even though you're not an agile coach. So also look at teams and also lift it up and how the different kinds of interaction, why people behave the way they are, is important to sometimes understand, and sometimes it doesn't need to be said as well.
Right.
All right.
So when did you last do a coaching team contract? You did one relatively recently, didn't you?
I did indeed. I did. Yep. We had a team contract, which was a really great way to start the engagement and to find out about each other. And
Yeah.
it just sets the scene as to how we want to work with each other and how do we set up for success. It's the same thing that we usually encourage our teams to actually come up with, but somehow we as coaches forget ourselves, and we forget that we too need a team contract. There is huge amount of value in it as I mentioned, to just set that expectations, to have that site safety. But Alex, more than often we find, similar to how we set up the team social contract that's not being reviewed, we also forget ourselves, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's weird that it's called a contract, because it's not a contract in that you look at it and then you punish somebody because they didn't abide by the contract. So I think contract is not a, maybe it's not the right word to use for these things. I think the better way to think of them is it's a tool for the team to go back and reflect on them, perhaps in retrospectives. Hey, how are we doing with respect to these things we've agreed to do together? In that case, it's more like a reflection tool, I would say, Vinnie.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, with most things, we always forget to call each other out on the behaviors that we have set and the behaviors that we don't seem to hold ourselves accountable to.
Now, I'm going to put you on the spot, Vinnie, but you did a coaching contract in the last year with the coaching team. How well did that turn out? Did the team like abide by the contract, or I don't know?
No, actually, we didn't abide by the contract, and someone actually was brave enough to call it out. And
Yeah.
what we did is, what the team agreed is they would actually call out those behaviors just at the start before daily stand up, just to remind everybody that this is what we agreed upon. So that can be a technique to use whenever you feel that someone's not living up to what we agreed upon. And it's okay to chop and change, that's just life.
Yeah, you're going to add to the contract. Now, ultimately, I think we want to have not only empathy for our coaches, but have them have an empathy with us and get that common understanding. As Vinnie said, coaching is a hard gig. So I think anybody that you can help understand your challenges and vice versa is a great thing to have. It's just going to make you, I think, feel better about yourselves and be a better coach. But I mean, having empathy with other coaches can be hard. I mean, just finding the time to do it. What do you think about point number 3 there, Vinnie? You have people just not have empathy with other coaches?
I suppose I see a lot of the patterns where we feel that, we always tend to look out for other people, and we always seem to have empathy for our teams and the people that we work with. But sometimes or more than often, we forget about ourselves, which is so important. Seeing that empathy is such a big thing. If we're empathetic to other people, surely that we can also be not only empathetic, but understand each other and understand what we're going through. Because as humans, it's not only whatever that's at work that we're living with, but it's also whatever that we have going on in our personal lives as well. So sometimes to have that support and that understanding, and to have a colleague just to talk things out. And yes, we may not be able to solve all the problems, but to just have that supporting ear, it's really helpful. And I know empathy is such a big topic. I was dropping in on Renee's talk yesterday, and she was also touching on this topic hugely as well.
And you make me think, Vinnie, like if you didn't have empathy with your fellow coaches, you'd probably be less patient and you wouldn't want to listen to them and talk to them and stuff like that. I don't know.
I think, yeah. Right. This is your thing, Alex. You're good at this.
Well, I mean, I think you want to hang out with your team, your coaches. I mean, before pandemic in Sydney, every Friday afternoon, me and my group of coaches would go to the pub at 4:00 every single Friday. And we just hang out and talk and drink beer and have fun. And, a lot of you on this call know me personally because we've met at conferences. And when you go to a conference, where do you find Alex? In the hotel bar at the conference, having a beer with all his friends, right? So for me personally, it's important to socialize, get to know people. some of the talks and the conversations you have are just awesome. I'm huge on this, Vinny. I don't know. I mean, you're in the most remote city on the planet. I mean, I guess you have to use Zoom to socialize with your peers. I don't know.
I do. I use Zoom a lot. I use virtual drinks a lot, and also sometimes joining in on the meetups as well. So I feel again, yet again, and this is something that is prevalent to my current team that I'm working with, is we don't socialize enough, but yet we actually tell our teams, you need to socialize together. You need to go out. You know, go have a team breakfast. Get to know each other. But how often do we do that? So it's always being authentic, and as someone pointed out in the mentee slide, it's living the values. So it's being that message that you tell other people.
Well, I think if you have teams where you're not doing great as a coaching team, you can start to see perhaps personas or coaching anti-archetypes. I don't. You want to give a quick description of some of these, Vinny? I mean,
I don't know. I'm sure our audience has actually come across some of these, and we're really keen to hear from you at the end. I'm sure you have the framework coach. We have to do this and we have to do that, and this is my way or the highway. And there's always the coach that comes and listens to you and digs ideas, and the next thing you know, he presents it to somebody else, and then you don't even get any credit for that. And then there's, I call it the Oreo coach. Now you see it, now you don't. It's like that Oreo ad, just missing. And what are you doing? Well, I'm busy. It's just, so yeah, there's all these things, and I'm sure you're starting to think about all your colleagues, but even yourself as well. Sometimes we see ourselves in these archetypes, depending on what situation we're in.
yeah, have probably had some of these attributes. And in fact, I would argue that perhaps coaches who are struggling as a team might have all of these, and they're all just they have like an archetype stance, and they're being different types or combining them. But I guess it just comes down to perhaps not great behaviors. I don't know, Vinny. What do you think? Yeah,
maybe, but I feel it will all come together at the end, right? Sometimes we don't have great behaviors, and it's the important thing is we catch ourselves, or if somebody gives us feedback, we're willing to listen, and as I said, maybe have empathy to understand what context it was, and the ability to say sorry or not and move on. After all, coaching relationships is just like any other relationships that we have.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
Now, if you've got the coaching archetypes, you're going to see all these bad things on teams. Have you seen all of these, Vinny?
Almost. Have you seen all of this, Alex?
I would say I have, and more beyond this. But I mean, you could argue that I've seen this kind of behavior on any team, really. So perhaps it's not really the fact that it's an agile coaching team. It's just a team that's not doing great. I don't know.
Yeah, and this is what we say. We're still trying to tie it back, right? We're coaches, we're coaching team. We're just like any other team. We're just like any other leadership team. We're just like any Kanban team or Scrum team. But yeah, just give us a shout out in the chat if you've come across it, or maybe you've been in this situation as well.
Now, we have talked a little bit about how we might mitigate some of these dysfunctions. This is a classic way to do it, capability matrix. In fact, did I tell you the story of how I did that in my coaching team? I don't know, like 12 months ago. I don't know if I ever told you that story, Vinny, but have you done this before?
I have, but I would love to hear your story, Alex.
Well, I mean, we were a coaching team of like 5 coaches, I think. And we just followed, you know, a typical capability matrix. We all listed our ideas and we rated ourselves 1 to 10, and we came up with a spreadsheet, and you could sort by person and skills. And we probably spent like 3 hours on it. And I think after we spent 3 hours on it, we never looked at it again. So it wasn't really the fact that we had a document that we could refer to later on to, you know, find the perfect coach for the perfect situation. It was more like we spent 3 hours learning about what each other could and wanted to do, and maybe where we could learn from each other. So it wasn't the end result that was the important part. It was the process leading up to the thing that was important.
Vinnie and Alex, quick time check. We just finished 26 minutes.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So like I feel that capability metrics is just really important to also get to know each other's strengths, each other's weaknesses,
Okay.
and so that we can be a more successful team and play to each other's strengths.
What about retros?
Well, definitely need to have them, but but how often, you know, do you see a bunch of coaches sitting together and having a retro? So a lot of this is also, again, taking our own advice, and you know, we're guilty of that, you know, yet again. And I've been in coaching teams with Scrum Masters and Agile coaches as well, and would be guilty of doing the same thing. We'd get into the room, it'd be more of an offloading thing, or maybe come up with a couple of actions. Everybody goes off to their teams, and then after 2 weeks, we sit back and we have the same conversation again. So the important thing around it is to make it visible and to commit to what change that we want to see. You know, could be behavioral change, which is obviously the biggest bang for your buck, or changes in the way we do things.
Well, I think this is where a lot of coaches end up, and that's why perhaps you might have challenges in coaching teams. You ever seen coaches go through fatigue, Vinnie?
Yes, you're putting me a lot on the spot here today, Alex. Yeah, and it's normal for teams to be fatigued, for coaches to be fatigued. Most of the time, again, the work that we do is difficult. It takes a lot for us to speak the truth and tell people what they want to hear or don't want to hear. And that's part of doing our role, right? The thing is, it's the same. I'm saying this again. It's the same thing how we tell teams, you know, don't overcommit, and yet we overcommit sometimes. That, you know, you've seen sometimes coaches across 20 teams, across 15 teams. What do you do, and how can you actually tie that back to having empathy and supporting your colleague, knowing that they're actually in tough spots? I'd like to touch on, you know, some of the mental health and the burnout sometimes that you face with. It does happen. It can happen. There can be pressure from so many ends. You know, the client wants you to do one thing, your boss wants you to do another thing. You feel sorry for the teams. This sometimes people it can impact people, and you just carry it as part of your life. But what do you think, Alex?
I think if there's one thing in this slide deck that I am most guilty of personally, it's probably overcommitting. I think it's a pretty consistent theme I'm hearing across all organizations and coaches in the community in 2020 and 2021. I think it's related to the situation we're in with pandemic and the fact that our office is now in our home, maybe for a lot of you, and we're working really long hours. I think it's something to be aware of. You don't want to burn out, and you don't want your coaching friends to burn out either. It's not a good place to be. Here we go, Vinnie. This is the thing that you said in the very beginning when we very first started talking about this.
Yeah. So hope we're nearing the end
What'd you
of our,
call it?
yeah.
Yeah.
We're nearing the end of our presentation, to Alex, and hopefully you're starting to see the themes that, you know, we too should make an effort to practice what we preach. And that includes actually modeling the agile behaviors, the agile values, know when we're right and know when we're wrong as well. Turn up for your teams and always continue to learn, continue to grow, and continue to share.
There you go. Take us home, Vinnie.
Me? I
Yeah,
thought you
take
did
us home.
this. You
No,
loved
no,
it.
you do it.
Yeah, so we're at the end of our presentation, and the moral of the story, we hope, is quite obvious. You know, we tend to think that as agile coaches we have all the answers and we know everything, and you know we're here to save the world, and you know we're put us in a team together, we're the best, we're the exemplar team. You know, what harm could a bunch of agile coaches do together? But the truth is, we're not special, we're not gods. We're just like humans. We cry, we bleed, and we're just like anybody on any agile team. And that's the message I always tell my new scrum masters when they start and when they're frustrated with their teams and they said, oh, it's not going well. And I said, what do you think a bunch of coaches would look like if we're working in a scrum team? Like, oh, really good. And I'm like, nope, we're human beings. So on that, Alex, would you want to share some closing thoughts?
Some of the worst teams I've ever seen were agile coaching teams.
Okay.
And you know what? When I saw them is because I was on them.
So,
I
Alex,
just have to accept.
yeah, Alex and Vinny, we have a couple of questions. Is it okay if we can, if you can take that?
Yeah, we are just about to finish and then we'll take questions.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
But I think you have to have a sense of humor, Vinny. You got to have a sense of humor. We'll get to questions in 1 second.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. That's us.
Yeah.
Yep. We're always trying to compete who has the better hair. So we just thought we'd call ourselves the Luscious Locks Duo. And we've got a really big surprise to close up. Alex will project a Menti. And as we said, you know, we want this talk to be inclusive and interactive. So Alex is going to put a Menti up, and we just like you to share some agile drama. After all, it's the weekend, right? So tell us a story. Who have you worked with? What's challenging about them? Any funny stories? Please don't use actual names. And as a fellow coach actually said to me, don't be a jerk. So once Alex projects the Menti, we really encourage you to share some of these stories, maybe throughout the slide, throughout the talk, you've been thinking, oh, that's that. But also, wow, I was that. That was me. I've been difficult.
We'll answer questions while I put up the Menti. So you can answer the Menti while we answer questions. So I guess we're open for questions now, and I'll stop sharing and share the Menti stuff.
Thank you, Alex and Vinny, for that wonderful session. So we have a few questions. One of them is like, how many teams can a coach pick up and work at a given time? The optimal size of it. Is there any optimal size that we go with?
Oh, what do you think, Vinny?
It actually depends on where the teams that you're coaching at are and what the maturity level of the teams are. Preferably if it's really low maturity, you'd like to keep it in, you know, under 5, maybe keep it small. Yeah. And then as they progress along the maturity, maybe you can take a bit more. I don't really have a number per se, just, to give you a round figure, but I do think, in the teens, or, 8, 10, 12, 20s, that's crazy. And sometimes some people say quite proudly, oh, I've got 15 teams. But it's how effective can you be with those 15 teams, right? What do you think, Alex?
I think it's like a scrum master pretty much. I mean, if you want the optimal outcome, you got one coach per team. And then as you get more and more teams, you get more diluted. Pretty much the only way an agile coach can start to scale at that point is by coaching other coaches. So if you're a coach for 20 teams, the only way you're going to be effective is by coaching 20 scrum masters at that point. You probably won't be directly involved with those teams much at all. So as you scale up, you start to coach leaders and coach scrum masters. As you scale down, you get more directly involved with teams.
Yeah.
Depends how big your client is, the maturity, everything Vinnie's saying. Everything's unique.
Yeah, and it's also down to, if your scrum master is just a dedicated scrum master, do you have a hybrid scrum master? Do you have 3 POs on a team? I know that's ridiculous, but it's happened, and do you even have a scrum master to begin with? So you really need to have that retrospective with ourselves as coaches to see what that sweet spot is. Yeah.
Okay. The other question that came up, Alex and Vinnie, is regarding retrospectives only. So I picked up that word, and it's like, what do a coach do when they're blamed for a retrospective gone wrong? Like, coaches do get blamed a lot.
So it sounds like the question is, a coach has facilitated a retrospective and it hasn't gone great. Is that the question?
It can be either that, or maybe the scrum master that the coach is grooming, for that scrum master, that thing has gone absolutely awry, and the coach is getting blamed for that. What do we do in that scenario?
Yeah. What do you think, Vinnie?
I was going to ask you, but I feel like, when I look at the word blame, it doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't resonate well with me. So I'm trying to understand where this blame is coming from. Who has put the blame there? Is it the team? Is it the leadership?
So let me explain. So this I hear a lot. It comes as a word of caution. Be careful. That team is really cranky. And you allow them to express in the retro, and they will start fighting. And then management will say, oh, you could not manage the situation well. Are you sure you are a scrum master or a coach material? You could not handle the situation. So when a consultant changes, or a scrum master or a coach changes, they're like, oh, beware, that team, that's a very sensitive team. The situation is all screwed up. So they just went and they end up fighting. And that has happened a lot of time. So we warn each other.
That's a great retrospective. That's the whole point of retrospectives, right?
But they end up fighting, and then one of them goes back crying to the manager. I'm so sorry. But yeah, so then one of them goes back, and then manager's like, oh, that happened with you. Like, the horrible person gets the bashing. Of course, he or she deserves that. But then this person has a jack. They can go and tell, manager, and manager listens to them. Probably they're the, that exceptional contributor of the team, something like that.
You got to tell them, hey, something bad is going down. There's something not right with your team. This is just a symptom of something not going right with your team, right? I mean, don't be a child about it. Things are gonna get upset sometimes. That's just the way life is. I would argue that that's a better retrospective than the other type of retrospective. The other type of retrospective is where nobody says anything because they're too scared to say anything.
Yeah.
That's a bad retrospective because nobody speaks up. Well, I feel pretty strongly about that, Vinnie, but what's your perspective on that one?
Well, my perspective is to actually encourage Dipti to put it in the mentee confession. Because that was fine.
I did.
Okay, Dipti and Alex, we have time for one last question. So this
Okay.
is from Johnny. He's saying that how can you raise the profile of these concepts to improve coaching teams around the world, like a Hippocratic oath for coaches or something of that sort?
Alex has to answer that because there's conflict of interest from the person that asked that question. Alex?
Okay. I think there's a lot of topic areas coaches don't touch when they become coaches. In other words, there are some areas that coaches may never get trained in. So to give you an example, I find it interesting when an agile coach becomes an agile coach and they haven't been a scrum master. I would argue that it's going to be very difficult for an agile coach to empathize or understand what truly happens on a team when they haven't been a scrum master themselves. So I think in those kind of cases, you want formal training programs that include these kinds of topic areas in them. So I think agile coaching classes and certifications should include stuff like, here's how you be an ethical coach. Here's how you work with other coaches. And I think those kinds of things need to be formalized and publicized publicly. Because agile coaching is more than just asking questions, right? It's more than powerful questions. It's more than listening. There are a lot of nuances. The reason these topics are usually so funny for experienced coaches is because they've lived through it and they've experienced it in their own lives. But a lot of coaches earlier in their journey may not resonate with this material simply because they haven't encountered it. So I think that's how I would approach it.
I suppose, yeah. So sort of putting, making it visible to the industry that we need to have a section on ethics, be it on the Scrum Master course or the PO course or any other course out there, and to build it in that component, and perhaps that would stop that hypocrisy amongst coaches. But I'd actually tie that back to our slide to say, you know, these are the different types of employment of coaches. And sometimes to have awareness that what we're doing is actually what we're told to do. And how do you find that sweet spot? And that's why the saying always says the larger the mortgage, the more silent the agilist.
Yeah. Well, I think we've hit our time box. Are we all?
I was just gonna pause both of you. Yeah, we're just in time. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Vinnie. We've had a great time listening to both of you. So let's request if you can spare some time and go to the networking. Thank you, Alex. Back to you. If you could spare some time and go to the networking lounge and consulting corner, spend some time with us. And participants, if you have any further questions for speakers, you may go there. Thank you all. Have a short break and we'll continue with the next session.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Guys.
Thank you so much.
Good talk.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Alex. Thanks, Vinnie.
Thanks for contributing to our confessions. Wish we had more time to go through it, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. I have mine there.
Business agility is a set of organizational capabilities, behaviors, and ways of working that affords your organization the freedom and the flexibility to achieve your purpose and serve your customer, no matter what the future brings. And for us, business agility is a set of organizational capabilities, behaviors, and ways of working that affords your organization the freedom and the flexibility to achieve your purpose and serve your customer, no matter what the future brings. And for us, we're the Business Agility Institute.
Seattle, we believe the power of agility is unlocked through people, not processes. We embrace collaboration and partner with thought leaders to design world-class learning. We encourage relentless thinking because we know it fuels business agility. We're IC Agile, and we love to move.
First Group is proud to sponsor the Agility Together conference. DP and team, you're doing a great job. On our end, we're building the world's first platform for democratic decision making in schools.
Folks, let me know when you want me to share the screen.
Sure, Smita, let me. Sure. In another minute or so, we should be able
Sure.
to start.